Daniel Harper had always been a quiet, introspective boy. He was the kind of kid who spent hours reading, lost in books, or wandering through the woods behind his suburban home or thinking endlessly about the future. His parents, Greg and Emily Harper, were the picture of traditional family values, a family with enormous wealth and connections. They had high expectations for Daniel and his elder sisters, all of whom were expected to be obedient, excelling in school and in their social lives. To them, family was sacred, and their image in the community and the country mattered more than anything. For years, Daniel had fit into their perfect picture, the cultured son of a wealthy man. He did what was expected of him, kept his grades high, and didn't cause trouble, nor did he look for one. But something inside him stirred as he entered his teenage years, something that didn't fit the mold of the Harper family. A strange path that would be considered an abomination to the family. Daniel, who had been a strict introvert with dreams, began to notice Ben, a new boy at school. Ben was everything Daniel wasn't: outspoken, handsome as the morning sun, bold, full of life, with a smile that could light up even the darkest corners of a room. He was the type of person who didn't care about what others thought, a trait that Daniel secretly admired with passion, wishing he could be like that, wishing he could face his parents without fear. They had broken his wings, made him nothing more than a vegetable in a place he called home. It was in the fall of his senior year that Daniel realized, for the first time, that the attraction he felt for Ben wasn't just admiration. It was love, one that he hadn't felt for anyone before, not even the very prettiest girls who would die to go on a date with him. The kind of love that made his heart race when Ben walked into the room, the kind of love that made him crave every fleeting moment they spent together. They began to talk, then to meet secretly after school. Daniel's heart soared each time Ben smiled at him, each time they touched, even if only for a moment, and Daniel fell more for Ben when he was brutally bullied, but Ben stood as his defense, breaking the necks of his bullies and facing heavy punishment for Daniel's sake. The force of attraction grew stronger. The rich introvert boy and the poor fearless boy with the touch of masculinity, the relationship was nothing but perfect. But Daniel knew better than anyone else that this love was forbidden. Like quicksand, he was slowly sinking into the abyss and there was nothing he could do about it. Daniel had been raised with a deep-seated belief in the importance of family, but also with a strict, suffocating view of the world. His parents had never openly discussed issues of sexuality, but the disdain for anything that deviated from what they deemed normal was obvious. So, when Daniel began to realize who he was, he felt a deep shame settle in his chest. His love for Ben wasn't something he could ever share with his parents, it was something to hide, something to keep buried in the deepest corners of his soul, but with each passing moment, this felt impossible. But love, as it often does, couldn't be contained. One evening, Daniel's father Greg, who had always been a domineering figure, found a text message on Daniel's phone. He hadn't touched his boy's phone before, but he felt the urge that night. It was a message from Ben, simple but loving, romantic, and with an erotic picture of himself that couldn't be ignored. Daniel tried to brush it off, but Greg's icy silence in the following days spoke volumes. His father's sharp, accusing questions cut through him like daggers, demanding to know if what he suspected was true. "You better tell me the truth, Daniel," Greg's voice thundered. "What's going on with this boy?" "Nothing, Dad, he's just a friend." Daniel insisted, refusing to betray his love or ever dare to reveal the truth, because that would mean chaos. Daniel had never seen his father so angry. His mother, Emily, stood by silently, her face twisted with disgust. The words from her mouth were bitter poison, each one a confirmation of everything Daniel had feared. "You're sick, Daniel," she spat. "This is not how we raised you. This isn't normal. You are possessed by the devil." The rejection, the venomous hatred in their voices, nearly broke him. But they didn't stop there. They refused to allow Daniel to live a life that contradicted the image they had built for themselves, a life where everything had to be perfect, pristine. That meant their son could not be gay under any circumstance. Greg Harper had maintained a wealthy image so hard to stain. "You don't understand, Father. You never do." I have grown attached to him. I need to see him. Daniel thundered, his anger slowly growing. But with each glance Greg took at the message of love from another boy to his son, he grew furious and mercilessly beat up Daniel, punching his face as hard as he could. His mother did nothing to stop it, she supported her husband, watching as her son was abused. For the next few weeks, the Harper household became a prison. Daniel was confined to his room, his every move monitored. His phone was taken from him, his privacy stripped away without mercy. His parents, enraged by what they saw as a betrayal of everything they stood for, turned their wrath on him like he was a disease. It started with verbal assaults, then escalated to something far worse, physical punishment and emotional trauma. Greg would strike Daniel with an unforgiving hand, shouting how he was disgusting and damned to rot in hell. Emily, her anger laced with sorrow, would tell him how much she was disappointed in him, how she had failed as a mother. The emotional manipulation was just as brutal. They would tell him that his love for Ben was a sickness, something that could and should be cured. Daniel's mother would lock him in his room for hours, forcing him to anoint himself with holy oil and pray for deliverance, as she called it, reciting Bible passages meant to convince him that his love was evil and that he needed to repent. The isolation was suffocating. Their son was slowly losing his mind and they cared less. Daniel was cut off from his friends, from school, from Ben, and even from his own thoughts. His parents made it clear, he could either give up this sinful relationship and return to being their obedient son, or they would cast him out forever and watch him die. But it wasn't just the physical abuse that tormented him. It was the emotional and psychological scars they inflicted, threatening him with death and hell as his condemnation. His parents wanted to break him, to force him into submission, and they didn't care what it took. With their love growing stronger, Ben couldn't live without seeing Daniel, and each night he would sneak into his room through Daniel's broken window and they would make out passionately while Daniel suffered painfully in the morning like a hardened prisoner. Daniel tried to endure. He tried to be the good son they wanted him to be and also be a loving partner to Ben, but with every passing day, it became harder to hold on to his sanity. His love for Ben was real. He had come to realize that he could never change who he was, and he couldn't hide it anymore. But the more he resisted, the more his parents punished him. And then, one night, after weeks of escalating punishment, Daniel snapped like the twig of a weakened tree branch. He had been pushed to the brink by verbal and physical abuse, by the constant reminder that his love was not only forbidden but hated. The words they had thrown at him echoed in his mind, "You're sick. You'll never be normal. You'll never be one of us again." He couldn't take it anymore, and Ben, who happened to be in his bed that night, was more furious than ever. "You have to fight for our love, Daniel," Ben roared. "Face your father and break his bones. He can't stand against us. I love you, Daniel, and I have proved my love countless times. Now is the time to prove yours by making your decision. Let your father know you have become a man." "Ben, I'm scared. My father will make everything worse if he finds out that I'm not yielding to his will," Daniel confessed. "Then kill them all," Ben advised. "Anyone who's a hindrance to our love doesn't deserve to live. Wipe them all out and we will be free. Kill your family while you have the chance." His words sank deep into Daniel like poison. Daniel took a deep breath, swallowing his fear. In the dead of night, when the house was quiet, he made his move. He had come up with a plan, a cruel, twisted plan, one that he'd devised with Ben. He had to make them understand, to force them to feel the weight of what they had done to him. He slipped into the kitchen, where Ben had secretly placed poison meant to kill termites and snakes, in the back of the cupboard weeks before. His mind raced as he mixed the deadly concoction into the drinks preserved in the fridge, just enough to make them weak, to make them suffer, to make them feel something. He wasn't ready to kill them, not yet. He only wanted them to understand the pain he had endured, to break them the way they had broken him. Fear and adrenaline coursing through him, he rushed back to his room, leaving no trace of his evil act. The next morning, they all had breakfast together as a loving family and his father sipped his drink. Daniel's heart pounded in his chest. One by one, they all took a sip of their dad's juice in perfect harmony, except for Daniel, who had a hidden motive. The silence was deafening, the weight of his decision settling like lead in his stomach. The plan had worked. His parents and siblings who never had pity for him had succumbed to the poison, collapsing on the floor around him. They were unconscious, breathing heavily, but alive, yet for how long? The next step was inevitable. Daniel called Ben at once and they went to the living room to plan their next move. They had to bury them. He had to make them disappear, but at the sight of the bodies he vomited. He couldn't do it alone, and out of love, Ben offered to bury the bodies while Daniel waited in his room. His 3 sisters, Emma, Lily, and Grace, had to go as well. They couldn't be witnesses to what he had done. They would tell the world, and Daniel couldn't have that. One by one, the poison took them, their fragile bodies slumping in a heap. And as Ben buried them, Daniel watched from the window, feeling an overwhelming emptiness as the grave was covered and the shovel washed off. The deed was done. Or so he thought. To overcome his sadness, he and Ben partied like never before. They were finally free to make out, to love each other without boundaries, to smoke and do anything they wished. How was the look on his face, Daniel? Hope you showed him who's the boss, Ben asked as he smoked with reckless abandon. Daniel had never been a fan of cigarettes, but with Ben as his lover, he had to try it. They are all gone now, no trace, no evidence. I'm a man now, I'm a free man, Daniel declared as they walked back to the grave to take another look. They both smiled as they smoked in quiet joy. It was finally over, or so they thought. Days passed and different people started asking questions. Where was his family? Where were his siblings? Daniel, having planned everything, kept lying that they had all traveled for a family vacation, leaving him to be the man of the house. At first they believed him, but as weeks went by, his made-up story no longer made sense. Their phones went unanswered and no friends nor neighbors knew where they'd gone. Their cars sat in the garage while Daniel insisted they'd traveled by cab. Everyone wanted the truth. Each night neighbors, friends, and union members noticed loud music coming from the house, an act never committed by the Harpers before. On rare occasions, Ben and Daniel were caught by neighbors making out in the front yard with no shame. With each passing day, curiosity about the Harpers' disappearance grew. Neighbors called the police, reporting Greg, his wife, and 3 daughters missing, with Daniel now in full control of the house. The police arrived and questioned Daniel, who kept lying with every sentence. The officers detected his deception as sweat gathered on his forehead. They requested a deep search and escorted Daniel to the front yard. Investigating the scene, they noticed something off in the backyard. The unwashed shovels and blood prints on the wall gave away Daniel's evil act. 3 officers pressed him with questions, but Daniel resorted to emotional blackmail. "We need to know what he used that shovel for," one officer said. "The clay on the blade appears dried, the backyard soil loose, and there are bloodstains on the walls, signs something was buried here." With permission from the detective, they dug for several minutes before discovering something truly evil, the lifeless, beheaded bodies of the Harpers. Daniel's world crashed around him as he was arrested. He could hardly believe his eyes as they unearthed those headless corpses one by one from the shallow grave. He was certain he'd only used poison, not beheading, but now nothing he said sounded like the truth. He was tortured for weeks before finally confessing everything he had been hiding, leaving no detail untouched. Daniel was charged with multiple counts of attempted murder. On the day of trial, he stood before the judge, alone and broken. His family was gone and Ben, on the other hand, was nowhere to be found. Now the system was going to make him pay for his crimes. But as the trial unfolded, the unimaginable happened. On verdict day, Daniel stood in the courtroom, haunted by what he had done. When the doors opened, his heart stopped. There they were, his parents, alive and standing at the front of the room in handcuffs. The courtroom fell silent. His parents were not dead. They had never been poisoned. They had orchestrated the entire thing, pretending to die to frame their son and have him sentenced to death. As the truth unraveled, Daniel's parents exposed their vile, twisted plot before the judge. They had never accepted Daniel's love for Ben, and in their hatred they had faked their deaths, manipulated their son into committing the ultimate crime. Detective Laura, who had been on the case from the start, revealed in court that the DNA of the headless bodies did not match Daniel Harper. "I secretly launched a deeper search on noticing discrepancies," Detective Laura declared. "To my greatest surprise, the Harpers were seen in another country with new identities. A second DNA scan confirmed it was Daniel Harper's family. They were never dead." Reporters gasped in shock, recording live as viewers tuned in by the thousands. Daniel's world shattered. He had been the victim, yet he was made to look like the villain. "If these are the Harpers," the judge asked, "then who are the headless corpses found in the Harper backyard?" Emily broke into tears, overwhelmed with guilt. "Our son had ruined our identity. We couldn't stand the shame of watching our son become gay. My husband and I decided to eliminate him, but legally. We secretly approached his lover Ben, offering him $500,000 to betray Daniel and advise him to kill his parents, a plan to send him to death row," Emily confessed bitterly. Silence enveloped the courtroom. The judge had never seen such a case. Daniel, still in handcuffs, sobbed bitterly. He had been betrayed by his lover and his own family, the greatest pain a young boy could face. The trial ended with Daniel's charges dropped. His parents were arrested for attempted murder, psychological abuse, and manipulating their own son. But the damage was done. The truth was exposed, but the scars would never fade. News spread far and wide. Daniel Harper gained massive support from various foundations. Ben, meanwhile, fled alone to another country, leaving his family behind. Detective Laura wasn't about to let the case rest. She had men watching Ben for any sign of contact. Daniel had been pushed to the brink, and though the justice system had initially failed him, the world now knew the truth: he was the victim, not the villain. And his parents? They were the monsters who didn't deserve a child like Daniel. But as he stood before the judge, staring at his parents in handcuffs, Daniel realized the darkness didn't end with their exposure. There was more, so much more, that he would need to confront. Only time would tell whether he could ever truly heal from the nightmare they had forced upon him. Do well to subscribe to Twisted True Crime Stories for more videos, and don't forget to turn on your notification bell so you won't miss an update. Stay tuned for another video.